Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Idagio Live. It's Thursday, which means it must be Conversations with Thomas on Idagio Live, the place where classical music happens. You know how much I love that motto. It's great. Tonight, what can I say? This is a happening show. First of all, my surroundings have changed, which you might have noticed. So I promised you last week, I'd tell you, I'm actually in Florence. And of all things, and the reason I'm telling you this is not because my travelogue is particularly interesting, but because I'm actually rehearsing again in an opera house for a production. And I cannot tell you how exhausted I am and how good that feels. So I'm in Florence. I also have a co-host with me this evening. This is Pinu. Pinu, say hello. Hello. Now, Pinu sits here. Pinu's with me all the time now in Florence. So we have a co-host. So enough nonsense. We have a fantastic show tonight. A conversation with a guy I know, like, I'm not sure as well as you watching the show know, but you know, his name, his performances, his legend, his awards. I mean, what can I say? David Garrett, good evening. Wonderful to meet you.
Good evening. Pleasure meeting you too over Zoom. And also good evening to everybody, or good morning, or whatever time it is around the world.
Wherever you are. Where have I caught you? Where are you?
I am actually on a big boat right now, but I'm not traveling on the sea. I'm next to the harbor, and it's for a small TV production we are about to do tomorrow. So I get to also make some music in the circumstances, what is possible these days.
Oh, fantastic. Have you, well, of course you had, like all of us, you've had your calendar pretty much wiped out or moved around.
Absolutely, yeah.
Is everything just moving forward like a big tsunami into the future?
A little bit, of course. I mean, in the end, we were planning to go on tour last year and this year worldwide. And what can you do besides being very hopeful? I mean, it's a very difficult situation for many people out there.
That's awful.
But if people have bought a ticket, of course, you try to let them know that the moment everything is possible again, we will perform there, and I'm looking forward to finally performing there. But in the end, we are actually moving a lot of things, of course, forward.
Yeah.
with being very hopeful that things are going to work out very soon.
But it sounds like in your world, especially since you bridge so successfully classical and the pop medium, that when tours or pop projects fall apart, they just go away. That's it.
Well,
pretty hard to book a tour.
I like to basically, you know, every tour for me has a big importance, because even if I go on with crossover, it kind of opens a door for the next tour, which is classical. You know, for a lot of people who have actually seen me perform crossover, they actually also went to see me play Beethoven or a Bach solo evening. And so for me, every tour is a step to another step. So, you know, in the end, of course, I think a lot of musicians miss performing right now. Luckily, we do have the arts, even if I just play at home and play for myself or play for my mother or for my sister. It's still a sense of performing for somebody, which I, of course, take advantage of probably more than my mother wants to.
Has this time been a rest in some ways?
Yes. In some ways, it is actually a little bit of a forced sabbatical.
I called it my COVID sabbatical last spring sometime. And please, ladies and gentlemen, don't get me wrong. We're not chuckling or laughing about the hard times that we're still in.
No.
This is a horrible, horrible time.
Yeah.
But we artists have had the rug taken out from underneath our feet. Yeah. And somehow we must turn it into a positive development. Yeah. And that's all
I see it exactly as you said. You know, if you lose positivity, you know, where you lose hope, and we go down a terrible path. Yes, it has been definitely a kind of sabbatical, yet a lot of doors which I would have never maybe taken or used suddenly opened. You know, I started working on different projects, which I honestly would never have had the time to do in a normal performance here. So I try to keep myself busy. Just about to hit the studio for a core classical recording with the Deutsche Grammophon. So that's something I'm super excited about. And there's a book project which I'm keeping fingers crossed. I get to write. So that's another exciting project, and many other things in the pipeline, which for 100% certainty, I would have never had the time and the chance to kind of go with these projects.
So a lot of my singing colleagues have confessed that when the calendar fell apart, they didn't sing. And then when something came up where they had, it was like, I have to get myself back together. Did you just put the fiddle down and say, the heck with it or have you just been, sorry, pardon the phrase, fiddling around?
No, basically that thing is always with me. And, I have a pretty strict regimen. It's every day, 2 to 3 hours, depending on my mood, of course, but 2 hours is a minimum. And that's the time I need to keep in shape. So if somebody calls tomorrow to play something, a big concerto or recital, I'm ready. I kind of start getting afraid when I don't play for a number of days.
Yeah.
Because I do know, as every artist knows, the amount of days you don't practice, you kind of also need to get yourself back into that comfort zone. Maybe, honestly, 2-3 days is not a bad thing. Sometimes you're even more inspired with the music and everything breathes more. But I think after 4 days, it becomes a little bit of a tougher way to kind of like, at least with the violin. I don't know how it is with the voice. But physically, if you don't play for 3-4 days, you hear it. You don't only feel it, but I can hear it.
Do you know what Horowitz said once when they asked him this? He said, well, if I don't practice for a day, I feel it. I hear it. If I don't practice for 2 days, my wife hears it. If I don't practice for 3 days, the whole world hears it.
It's very true, though. It's very, very true. So to get back to the question, I really do enjoy practicing, actually. So for me, keeping in shape, or whatever you want to call it, is actually something I do because I like doing it.
Ladies and gentlemen, what we're talking about, this is also a kind of a unique interview, which is really fun. As you know, I've been interviewing and getting to know so many colleagues that I wouldn't normally have had a chance to meet so casually through this series of interviews, which I thoroughly enjoy. And Idagio.com, the wonderful streaming platform, and then we have Idagio Live, which of course is this series. But of course, last June, we started the Global Concert Hall, which has been a huge success. And that's what we're doing tonight. And this is actually a pre-concert interview, if you will. I think the concert starts at 7:30, but it's going to stay online for a while, so you can come and go. If some of you have to drop off because you want to get the downbeat of the show, I get that completely, but we're going to keep going. You can always come back and hear the rest of it because all of the interviews stay online. But this is actually called, the show tonight is David Garrett Unlimited from Verona, which is streaming the Global Concert Hall tonight, whatever your day is, Thursday, 25 February at 7:30 p.m. Central European Time, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in America. And don't let me go through all of that. I don't know what it is in Australia, but never mind.
You're doing it beautifully.
And it will be available to watch until Sunday, February 28, 2021, 11 p.m. Central European Time. This is really a really wonderful and exciting program. I'm sure I'm going to watch it. It's going to be a lot of fun. It was filmed, if I understand it, in the Arena di Verona. No? Can you tell us about the program, David?
Well, the program is a little bit of. The last 10 years, I've made a lot of classical recordings, but I also have done my own projects, meaning I love arranging music I like listening to. That can be a piece by Metallica, that can be a piece by Billie Holiday, that can be a piece by any musician from the 20th century, popular musician, but it can also be a classical piece. So over the last 10 years, I've kind of established my kind of own repertoire, a little bit in... I guess somebody who's done that in the past was maybe Fritz Kreisler, who I'm a huge admirer of. And so I discovered, bit by bit, my own program. And Unlimited actually was the tour where we combined my favorite pieces from the last 10 years, from the crossover, but also from the classical part. So it's probably the most diverse program, but I think, and I always feel that when you're an instrumentalist, and I learned that from Itzhak Perlman, you do not have the words to entertain an audience. Of course, you can speak in between the pieces, but musically, you always have to have a very intellectual journey. Meaning, if you play 2-3 fast pieces, people will get bored of the virtuosity. If you just play slow things, people will start falling asleep after the third piece. I mean, depending how good you are, maybe not, but still, you guess you know which direction I'm going with this. So for me, being able to play a Clair de Lune and then go to a Master of Puppets by Metallica, and then playing a little bit of jazz, and then a little bit of R&B, and then going back into a piece by Beethoven. I think that is really quite a journey, which people, at least I totally get excited performing. And I think people in Verona also enjoyed it.
Well, it was a very popular program, and I'm so glad they captured it, and we can have it on the Global Concert Hall. It's a wonderful program. David, is there? Let's go backwards a little bit. I mean, I know you as a personality. I know you as a musician, but I only know a little bit of your life. Obviously raised in Germany, obviously by an intellectual and ballerina mother, raised as a musician from a small child. What part of your childhood do you think people don't know about that maybe is interesting?
Well, maybe the things people do not know about are the ones I might want to really keep for myself.
Fair enough. Is there one you want to let slip out?
Let me think. I mean, anybody can guess. The violin is an instrument where you start practicing at a very, very early age.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any violinist who really had a career starting age if he started age 10, 11. I think Isaac Stern started with 8. That's pretty much the oldest somebody ever started to really become a world famous violinist. That being said, it is very draining. It's a lot of work. It's very frustrating. I see my nephew from a child from my brother just turned 5, and I see how impatient he is. He's a lovely kid, but he's super impatient. He plays with this thing, and then 2 seconds later, he's like, interesting there. And I can only imagine, I mean, I don't necessarily remember me playing the violin, but I can only imagine that it must have been tough at that age to really practice an hour or a half an hour or 20 minutes even to be focused on something. So I think it is not an easy instrument to really start with.
So how did it start? Was I mean, your parents were encouraged musically, and that's fine, but
yes,
clearly you must have just loved it. When you started, it was like, I want to do this.
Well, I have a brother who's 2 years older. He's now a lawyer, so he stopped.
Oh, he has a real job.
He has a real job, yes. And lucky him, he actually does have a job for the last year and a half. He started actually playing the violin. It was a little bit of a forced marriage with the violin because my dad wanted my brother to play the violin. And so obviously I'm 5 years old. I don't know my brother has a forced marriage. For me, my brother has a toy which I do not have. Of course, being the younger brother, I do want to have the same toy. So me actually asking for the violin was a personal decision, which I 100% probably also, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, there were certainly times where I regretted that decision because it's ups and downs when you start learning the violin. But in the end, my brother was the one who really made me think of the instrument as something cool.
Well, what were your friends like? Did you have other? I mean, as a kid, where I was playing baseball and doing completely asinine things as it being what they call a normal child in America. But I mean, when you're spending that much time and you're so devoted to it and you want to do it, did you share that with other friends? Were you in a music school early? Were there other people? Were the other boys and girls playing violin in your class? What was that like?
I was actually living kind of two lives. On the one hand, at that age, I was still going to normal elementary school.
Right.
But on the weekends, I was always traveling to teachers. And to be quite honest, I wasn't the cool kid at elementary school. Not at all. Violin, kids can be mean. It's not the instrument where the boys and the girls come over and are like, hey, show us the instrument, we play something for us. So that I was kind of the nerd for a very, very long time, very long. But of course, there was always that musical island. When my parents drove to Lübeck at that point, or to Hilversum for different teachers. And in those classes, I was cool because I was actually getting quite quickly good at something. So for me, those were the islands where my self-esteem with the violin, and I'm good at this. But school was something totally different. So it was a little bit of a double life. In one life, I was the nerd. In the other one, I was actually being appreciated for being a nerd.
That's incredible. Well, I mean, this double life thing, I mean, that seems to be a theme, because you are so amazingly versatile. You used the word crossover, which I know is a word that we use in the classical department, and I certainly made a lot of crossover records. But I must say, sometimes I was a bit flippant, and I said in an interview, I would say, I'm not sure which direction I'm crossing over from, or what crossover means. And what I find with you that is so remarkable, and it's somewhat similar to Renee Fleming. I did songs from Curran and Porter and that sort of thing, which we considered classically trained artists and so forth. But you guys, but especially you just simply embrace other genres, and there's no question when you play, whatever, Billie Holiday or some other piece, or some, as you say, crossover music. There's maybe somebody who's never heard you and hears you play that. If somebody said, "Oh, well, you should get his Bach recording because it's just amazing," they'd probably look at me and say, "What's a Bach?" or "Oh, that can't possibly be." And perhaps the other way around. Is that something that comes naturally, or is it something you cultivate or you've worked on?
It comes very natural.
You play the music you play.
Let's quote another great composer and musician, Leonard Bernstein. I mean, he said there's either great music or there's bad music. And let's face it, there's also classical music is always put on that pedestal. But let's face it, there's so much bad classical music, which is forgotten. So there's not only great, amazing classical, there are great pieces and wonderful repertoire everywhere. But for me, a song needs to be connect to my heart. It needs to be emotional. It needs to have a wonderful harmonic progression. It needs to have a great melody, which gives something to me. And that is found everywhere, even the most simplest melody. And let's face it, even Mozart and Beethoven, they made very simple pieces for the piano here and there. And they're so beautifully. So, of course, when people say, pop music isn't that complex, like a ninth Beethoven symphony, that is absolutely true. But I think the quintessence of a great piece is a wonderful harmonic progression and a great melody. And that can be 30 seconds long or 30 minutes long. Right. It's still so hard to create that.
Well said. Back to your biography. Yehudi Menuhin.
Yeah.
Were you close? Did you study with him a long time?
I did. He was I think anybody who met him, anybody who had the privilege and pleasure to work with him can testify. He was such an amazing, humble human being, and he was drawn to talent. And I think when we first met, I of course, the hero, I was almost shaky. I was 9 years old, but Menuhin was like the icon. I listened to all the recordings, and and so I was so nervous. But the moment I walked into, it was a hotel room. The moment I walked into my parents with the hotel room, he came over and he gave me a hug. Said, "Hey, nice to meet you," and everything was normal. I felt so comfortable. And then we actually, and I ended up playing like almost like an hour and a half. I was supposed to just be there for 10 minutes. And it felt like 10 minutes. But when I went out, my parents were like, "Listen, this was so incredible. He's listened to you for an hour and a half and worked." So he was a huge inspiration, is still a huge inspiration, especially being able to work within the Elgar concerto. And he took a lot of time working the Elgar with me until we actually did perform it in Vienna at the Musikvereinssaal.
Wow.
And that was, of course, the direct link to Elgar himself, because he did the recording with Elgar conducting it. So for me, that was probably one of the most moving experiences and amazing experiences, which until today, I don't remember much from my childhood. But that concert, I remember every note, and I remember seeing him conduct it. And that's something which is...
How old were you?
I was 15 years old.
Wow. Do you still play the Elgar?
Yes, of course. It's one of my favorite concertos in my repertoire. It's a difficult one, but it's full of noblesse and nobility, and that's what I love about it.
What is your proportion? I mean, is every season full of crossover projects or other genre projects as well as core classical repertoire?
I usually have like 3-4 months when I tour with one program, and then I tour for a month, 2 months with something else. If we look back into the obviously before COVID-19,
right.
I usually had 2 or 3 programs, one recital program, me and piano, just doing sonatas and maybe some virtuosic small pieces. Then I did each season 1 violin concerto or 2 violin concerto the same night. And then there was always also the crossover project, whatever it was. It was sometimes film music, sometimes it was more into the rock music direction. But I really felt, we talked about the word crossover. For me, crossover, yes, you're going somewhere literally on musical holiday, because it's something you're not 100% familiar with. But I always felt, if you're crossing over somewhere, you still need to know where your home is. So for me, crossing over doesn't mean you have to leave your home, behind and never return. Well, the home is where your heart is, and where you get your skills and where you get your inspirations for going on holiday occasionally. Right. So for me, it was so important to always, if I do a rock record, for me, the next thing is doing the Brahms concerto with Israel Philharmonic and Zubin, and being able to do that kind of, in Germany they say Spagat,
right.
to that split.
Yeah.
I think that's something which I am super happy in my life that I'm able to do that, and people are, supporting me.
Right.
Not everybody, you can't make everybody love you, but a lot of people do, and I'm very thankful and grateful for that.
Well, I think, I don't know, ladies and gentlemen, pardon me if I just read a few statistics here, but we are talking about a violinist that has sold over 3 million albums. So I think there's a lot of people supporting you. You have 24 gold and 16 platinum awards. You've got 3 pop echoes and 5 classic echoes. I think you're the only echo guy who is done that so demonstrably in both areas. I mean, yeah, there's a few people supporting. So tell me, but Yehudi probably never experienced that side of you.
No, I mean, he helped me also create that side, because this side would never exist if I would not have become a good classical musician. Right. For me, yes, I started experimenting with music also during my time at Juilliard. Yeah. But everything I do, phrasing, vibrato, taste, this is something you learn when you study music, when you study arts, when you study history. And this is something you have an instinct for when you're very small. It's good to have that instinct. I actually call talent when you're a kid, because you naturally get how music should be. But at some point when you're 13, 14, your brain needs to take over. And instinct, you should kind of put apart and question your own instinct, because only if you question your instinct, you will actually find the good instinct and also the bad instinct, because not everything you do naturally is right. At least you have to question it. And for me, crossover, everything is built on my ability to have good taste when I play something. And Bach is played, that more than anybody, is sung differently, and Mozart is sung differently, and Brahms and Alban Berg, you have to find the right sound, the right spirit, the right vibe, the right vibrato, the right energy. And it's pretty much the same going also a little further with going into jazz or into pop. Basically, even Menuhin, even working with him, prepared me to become good on the fiddle, good on the violin, becoming tasteful with what I do, because it's for me the most important thing. Whatever you do, you need to do it tastefully. And because of that, I hope that whatever I do, I have that standard. And that's the most important thing in my life.
When you were at Juilliard, is that when you worked with Itzhak Perlman as well?
Yes.
Right.
I was.
And did you have these kinds of fantasy repertoire conversations with him? By the way, throw in there some. Has avant-garde music ever been on your palette?
Yes, here and there. For me, I think every musician needs to find something where they're, of course, comfort zone, but also something they feel not comfortable. Because how are you gonna grow if you always do the things you're comfortably with? But here's a little fun fact. Itzhak Perlman, when I do play in New York, he actually comes with his wife Toby to the venue, and even if I play crossover, he sits there, in one of the first rows, and he actually enjoys it.
What I love about
he's told me.
Itzhak's idea of crossover is singing.
Well,
I mean, I've heard him sing like the jailer in Fidelio or whatever they're playing with in some concert. I mean, he's got some good chops. It's there.
Yeah, but
apparently in his class, he makes all of his students. There's this wonderful thing on Long Island Institute, and all of his violin students have to sing. They sing together.
Oh, absolutely.
Fantastic.
Not only that, but I think he got that idea a little bit. I mean, I think any musician who plays an instrument knows that the most natural, God-given talent is having a voice. And I remember we're also working with Isaac when I was 14, 15 in Verbier. And, he said, listen, we all try to recreate the human voice on an instrument. So don't listen to other violinists. Stop listening to Heifetz. He's great. Stop listening to Arthur Grimmiot, Mielstein. You will go back and listen to them. But now is the time to find your own voice. Listen to singers. Listen to Schubert Lieder. Listen to Schumann. Listen to the things where you have to learn phrasing. Because in the end, music is not about playing Flight of the Bumblebee very fast. I can do that. Great. But music, I know it's kind of really not going to sound good. But in the end, I remember playing also for the Elgar concerto. We just talked about it for Menuhin, and I remember him sitting there, and he was singing the second theme, this da 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 da, and this is how you try. You hear that, and that's how you try to. Question again. In the end, you try to recreate a phrasing, and the best way, and that's what Isaac and Itzhak and every great violinist told me, is the best way to find your own voice is sing it out loud. But I don't have a great voice, but try to sing it in your head, how you would phrase something. And basically that's for me the most important thing when it comes to playing the violin. Make it sound naturally, find your own voice, find your own phrasing, find your own textures, your own colors. And normally it's all up here, but you need to get it down here.
I could go way down this rabbit hole with you, because actually being a vocal pedagogue as well, I very often use the metaphor of a violin for voice phrasing. Keeping the string, keeping the bow on the string, keeping the vibration constant, keeping the pressure and so on. It's an interesting, similar. We'll have another conversation about this. All of this movement and musicality. Did your mother, as a prima ballerina, have influence on this? Did you do yoga and body movement as a kid, and was that all?
Here's a little fun story, which I will share for the first time from my childhood, which probably I did not tell. You were asking before. My mom, great ballerina, and she actually did take me, I think when I was 3 or 4 years old, to she was still doing ballet classes and doing all the exercises. So she took me actually to one of the ballet classes, and I had to put like those tights on, and that I remember. And let me say, it was the first and last time that I did it, because I mean I love ballet, I love watching it, but in the end, I think the program is starting right now in the background. So, but that's something
I'm getting some feedback here.
Let me.
Oh, you got it on?
I know.
No, it was on me for some reason. Was it you?
I did. No,
it was me. I'm afraid. I don't know why it started. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. We'll go there and just have a quick look. But anyway, finish your story. So you're in the leotards. What happened?
So basically, I knew I was not going to be a classical dancer, and call it instinct or whatever. But there was a moment where my mom was like, well, I love you very much, but those movements are not looking anywhere close to what you're supposed to do. So then I guess I'm pretty, it's my luck or bad luck. I don't know how to see it.
Well, I'll match you a story that probably no one knows this about me, but in terms of dance and music and so forth, I am completely passionate whenever I can or whatever comes across my radar to watch international ice skating competitions, either singular or duos. This movement on the ice, and especially when it's really interesting music, and some of the high level competitions, you get some Shostakovich and you get some modern things, and you get some, I just love watching this and how it works. And of course, it's amazing what they do, but it's the flow that interests me so much.
Yeah, I mean, it's to be quite. I was actually quite. I was actually working with Yevgeny Plushenko actually at some point on. It was an event called, I think, Dances on Ice or something like that, and I was fortunate to play some classical music while he was doing his turns and stuff. And I watched him during rehearsal. I mean, this is artistry meets athleticism. It was so fascinating. It's amazing what those people do.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to do a little, like I always like to do, we're going to do a little screen sharing here. And I see I pushed all the right buttons in there, Safari. So the next thing you should see is the Idagio splash page with the Global Concert Hall, David Garrett Unlimited, which has now started. So those of you who are still with us, we love you, and we know you're going to go over there and watch anyway. This is what it looks like. It's going to be a fantastic piece. We'll just give a couple of minutes of teaser. There he is.
That was backstage. I don't know if they can hear the music.
Yeah, they can, and I don't get to play very much of it because we get all sorts of.
Okay.
But anyway, this is Idagio, and if you want to come here and you can put in David's name here and you can see his amazing discography. But I'll let you play with all of that. I'm going to come back out here. David, the thing is, I suppose everybody would look at something like this and say, my God, what's it like to be in front of those people and everything. But what I love about those pictures is look at people's faces. Look at those eyes. Look at that expectation. Look at that joy of listening. Of course, we missed that in the COVID time, but just in general, this is what I can tell. I don't know you personally, but I can tell that this is what feeds your imagination. It's opening people's hearts and minds.
Yes. I do have to say, though, if I walk on stage, for me, the most important thing in my head, whatever program I play, is I want to do a good, decent job with the music. Right. If there's an orchestra or a piano player or a band on stage, the first and foremost important thing is I want to be happy after that show. I want to be focused. Yes, of course, I see the people, but my priority is always with me. And I think the moment you lose that priority and try to play too much to the audience, it's never a great show. I think people in the audience realize when you try to please them. Intimacy on stage, that view that an audience gets of an artist being in his element, that is what makes fascination for an audience, not somebody who's, of course, there are moments when I play to the audience because they need to be there, but that's not what I truly do inside. In the end, even if I go like this, I know musically it's important, and I do it for myself and I do it for the music. And it's funnily enough,
maybe the question was actually clumsy from my side.
Yeah.
No. Sorry, I've got a bit of a lag. No, the question was clumsy from my side. I didn't mean that you go out to play to those thousands of people, but you have this enormous following, and people believe in you and about you for exactly the reasons you just said. And I certainly hope a lot of my voice students just listen to you say this. Now, look, what we're going to do, and because I don't want to, we actually sent out and asked anybody who wanted to send in some questions to send them in, and we got only about 87 of them. I don't know. So I thought what we'd do is I'm going to just randomly go through this. So Danya has said, I attended 14 of your concerts. What is the song you played that you are most fond of between classical and pop music? That is somewhat a typical question we all get. I have a whole time answering. What do you have? Can you answer that question?
Yes, the Bach Chaconne.
Oh, okay.
I think, to be quite honest, it's the most brilliant piece ever written for violin. So there it is.
A question from Andrea. Does the sound of a violin get worse if you don't play it for a longer time?
Depends. I mean, you can overplay or oversing or overwork anything. Meaning that I think it's important to, there needs to be a period where an instrument is being played, but there also needs to be a period where the instrument can rest. Right. For instance, I do have two violins. I have a beautiful Stradivari, but I also have a working fiddle, and that's this one. The Strat I'm not always worthy also to play the Strat. In the morning, I do my scales on my working fiddle, which is also not a bad one. I do my scales, I do my arpeggios, I do the etudes. And if I feel it's a good day, I go pick up the Strat, because I think no matter what position you are in life, you need to earn the good things. I need to earn my violin.
Wow, I love that. All right, Christina, this is a little bit off the wall. How do you imagine your life as a retired person? What has been the weirdest rumor you heard about you?
I don't listen to rumors at all. And even if I hear something, I forget it because it's so far away from the truth that it doesn't really. It's nothing I can remember properly. But how would I see myself as a retired person? Is that the question at some point in my life? Or
I'm just throwing you the questions, and quite frankly, you don't want to answer this. Somebody also said they saw you on Instagram cooking vegan chili. Was that occasional, or are you in the vegan lifestyle?
I actually pescatarian. I stopped eating red meat and also white meat. So for me, I still eat occasionally fish, but I feel more energetic without red meat. Don't ask me why. It's anybody's personal choice. I feel like I have more energy. I also stopped drinking milk, actually. So there's a couple of things. Everybody's body is different. I need to find the thing which works for me, but I'm not against people eating meat. I'm not like, don't eat meat. It's just not working for me.
Kenneth asked, what was your audition repertoire for your Juilliard audition? Was there anyone else on the violin faculty you wanted to or worked with?
You want to hear something really funny?
Yes.
At the Juilliard application form, there is, there says teacher's choice number 1, teacher's choice number 2, and teacher's choice number 3. And guess what I did? I said, teacher's choice number 1, it's a chroma. Teacher's choice number 2, it's a chroma. Teacher's choice number 3, it's a chroma. you get that I really didn't want to study with him. So, and regarding repertoire, obviously you need to do 120th century piece. So I chose second violin concerto by Shostakovich. Oh, it was Bartok, second Bartok violin concerto. And there's a whole list. You need to have some Baroque piece, one solo piece, two Paganini caprices. I think I did 24 and number one in my audition. And another fun fact from that audition is that it was snowstorm in New York, and my parents actually did not know that I was going to audition for Juilliard school. And so I basically told my parents I'm going to visit my brother in Boston, who was studying at Harvard at that point. So I took the Chinatown bus from Boston over to New York, took a taxi up to Lincoln Center, did my audition. I thought I did pretty well. You have to imagine my English was really not good at that point. So I thought I did a very good audition. And at some point, there is the recall sheet. Now, my English is not good. For me, recall means they're not sure you did a good job. You need to play again to prove that you actually did not that bad. Yeah. So I look at that thing and I see my name and I just go like, oh, the word. Damn it, I messed it up. And then somebody saw that I looked very disappointed. He's like, hey, you made it. And I'm like, what do you mean? So basically, I thought I really messed up the whole audition. But in the end, I ended up, studying with Itzhak for 4 years, and probably the best musical 4 years of my life, because, when you live in New York and you work and live around Lincoln Center, all the ballets and the opera and Lincoln Center, Carnegie Hall, Juilliard students get reduced prices to Carnegie Hall, sometimes free tickets if you show up just right before 7 o'clock. You go to the Juilliard office and they always have some spare tickets for Carnegie. I mean, I must have seen maybe 150, at least 150 concerts, opera productions, Avery Fisher Hall, everything, jazz stuff also downtown, the Blue Note, I love to go. So for me, this was just just soaking in anything. And so that was a wonderful experience.
God rest him. He just passed, Chick Corea. I 2 or 3 of his concerts at Blue Note. I actually met him. There was a conversation about a concert that I might be in with him or something. He would do something. I mean, it never happened, and I was so intimidated. But what an incredible music. But the Blue Note, my God, what a place.
I've seen funny, there was one incident where a friend of mine was performing and Sting was in the audience. And then at some point, it was just a jazz pianist. So at some point, Sting goes to the stage, says, do you mind doing a couple of things with me? I mean, stuff like this, out of the freaking blue, and really out of the blue, not the things where it's planned before. But, these things kind of made me really want to become a musician, but also find the thing where my eyes light up and I get excited. It's, if you are a musician and you love music, it's the most beautiful job in the world, bottom line. And even now we can't really perform, but it will happen eventually again. And I'm really looking forward to playing again for myself, but of course also for everybody who's going to show up.
You have an 8-year-old fan, Søren, who would like to ask you, do you ride a motorbike?
No. Bicycle, yes, but not even in the city. I have to take the bike out to some, outside of the city. I am a little scared of my hands. It's my living. And I think if I would break a finger, I would be not forgiving myself for being that stupid to let that happen. And, of course, accidents can happen and sometimes they're not your fault. That's karma or, with destiny and things sometimes happen that are not good. But me taking a certain risk, and I think driving a motorcycle or motorbike, that would be too risky for me. Certain things I would just not do. Although I love motorcycles.
Apropos, I know this is completely off subject and forgive me, but being a passionate golfer, my stomach sank, my heart sank. But Tiger Woods has had a very serious automobile accident 2 days ago with catastrophically injuries to his right or lower leg, which will certainly impact his golf as well as the golf world. But I mean, what I wanted to say is, if anybody else loves golf like I do,
Yeah.
our hearts are with him and his family, but especially with him.
Absolutely.
Whatever rehab he was going through for his back just became a year of unbelievable agony just to be able to walk again. I imagine that's what the doctors are saying. Okay, I got another question for you. I got a technical question. If Evgenia says, I remember you in testing different incredible violins in Cremona. Personally, I can't forget the deep, dark kind of velvet of the Guarnieri sound. I know it would be difficult, but are you able to explain why and what specifically at the end made you choose the Stradivarius violin? This is a wonderful.
This is a good question. I don't remember choosing a Stradivari. Here's the thing, Guarnieri is something very interesting for violinists. And if you look into the history of violinists, probably more have chosen a Guarnieri del Gesù over a Strad. Menuhin, in the end, did the changed from even one of the greatest Strads, the Soil, to the Lord Wilton del Gesù. Schering played a del Gesù. Isaac Stern, Pinkas Zuckerman, my teacher, Itzhak plays a Strad. So basically a lot of incredible violinists, Paganini, best example. And I do have to admit that there's a huge fascination when it comes to sound with Del Gesù. And it's definitely something at some point in my life which I want to, I want to get to know. So I love my Strad dearly. At some point, playing a Del Gesù here and there in London when I go to Charles Barris or to Tim Inglis or whoever, Jason Price, I love going to the shops. For me, this is like shopping for candy. I don't have the money to buy the candy, to be quite honest, but I get a little taste by playing. And so at some point, a nice Guarnieri del Gesù is definitely a big dream, of course.
So, David, let me ask you, if you go into a shop, do all the major, the shops you go into, they know who you are or not?
Yeah, I guess sometimes they put a little bit of bigger price tag on just before I enter the room.
But I mean, have you ever had the experience of like going in and you say, oh, that looks like a wonderful violin? And they say, oh, do you play the violin? Well, I used to play the violin. Have you ever sort of smoked somebody? Have you ever caught them off guard?
I actually sometimes do it in New York when there's a violin player on the street, and I'm not necessarily wearing, the hair like this, but I wear a cap or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, let me see the fiddle, and then, do you mind if I play a few notes? Yeah. So usually I do play something nice, and they're like, hey, you must be professional. I'm like, yeah, sometimes.
Okay, here's another nice question. If Guanyo, I think I'm saying the name right, if you could have a heart-to-heart conversation with any deceased artist, musician, writer, poet, or scientist, who would that be?
Oh, probably Mozart, just because the letters he wrote are so much fun, and they're so full of vulgarity, actually, sometimes. I think he would have been a great person to spend a night with, because he did like his wine, he did like his women, and he was quite a fun character. And on top of that, he's an absolute genius with the amount, not even talking the amount of work he did in his short life, but also the quality and the advances in musicality. So Mozart it would be.
Okay, here's a question. I'm going to read it and I don't even know what she's talking about. What is the meaning of the human skull motive for you? It's fashion or philosophy or an approach to life. So please enlighten us, first of all, what the heck is the human skull motive?
No. I usually wear like a skull ring on this hand, or the left hand is left pure because I have to play, not on the right bow hand. And I used to joke, because Perlman was always telling, the bow arm, you need to have a strong bow arm. And I was like, when I went with the ring into Perlman's classes, he was like, why are you wearing a ring? I said, it makes my arm heavier, can dig into the strings. Or no, but it was a fashion statement. For me, it's, I don't mind having something on that finger. It's not a deep philosophical thing that, yes, I could start saying, death is part of life, and which it is, but in this case, it's just a fashion statement.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, my co-host Pinu, his sweater is also skull motif. I just realized that. So I'm
But
not.
by the way, Pinu is the kindest dog ever. I see him always in the background, but he's so quiet, lovely dog.
He just wants to be there. He's got no questions. He's just hanging.
He's hanging beautifully back there.
He's a sweetheart. We're kind
Yes.
of using the pod here. Let's see if I can find it. Okay, a lot of people want to know whether you're going to start recording or when the next recording is for Deutsche Grammophon.
Yes. I'm going to go into the studio in beginning of April, and probably gonna start arranging a couple of pieces before that, and then I'm going to start trying out some pieces. I don't want to tell too much about it, but it's going to be a core classical record, which I'm super excited about. It's been I think almost 3 years since I released the last one, and so for me it's a big challenge to put something, and also a big privilege. Deutsche Grammophon is a major label, maybe the biggest when it comes to classical. And I started with Deutsche Grammophon when I was 13 years old. So for me, it's a beautiful thing to be recording for them again. But repertoire, I still want to kind of like keep it for myself, and but it's going to be beautiful, and hopefully people will enjoy it.
I'm sure. Look, I'm seeing a lot of questions. I'll play some more here, but
Yeah.
I can see people, you in Spain, in Egypt, in Istanbul, in Georgia, in Korea, in Poland. When are you coming back?
When it's possible.
Yeah.
Trust me, I have my suitcase packed in the corner. My violin is next to me. The moment airlines and restrictions with quarantine are possible to tour or possible to enter and play. The problem with you will be able to travel somewhere, yes, and with negative tests and stuff. But the problem is I travel over there by myself. Even if I play a solo thing, I have to stick around in most countries for 2 weeks or 10 days at least, and then wait another 10 days or travel to another place, wait 10 days. I mean, there would be a wonderful way to do a long vacation with occasional concerts. But for me, and when it comes to touring, and when it also comes to, taking a pianist on tour, I cannot do that right now. And of course, there are no possibilities to play anywhere. Nice. So the moment there are small concert halls available, I'll trust me in the first one who's going to travel.
You still go on tours with a pianist and do classical solo violin repertoire in Suntory Hall or Carnegie or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you have these enormous, because something like this Verona concert, this is an enormous logistical apparatus. Was that only in Verona, or was it was part of a tour, wasn't it?
It was part of the tour. Every night, that same apparatus.
Yes. Every night somewhere else?
Every night, yes. Every night.
Oh my God.
It's quite a, we have like 6, 7, 8 trucks. We travel with that overnight to the next city. And I mean, I don't have to pick everything out of the truck and place it, obviously. I just pick up my violin after the concert. But it really is a huge team who's preparing everything overnight. And those are actually the people who are actually most suffering right now, because, they live from that touring life. We are lucky enough to have had our career, have had our, possibilities to settle down and we do music because we love doing it, not necessarily because we have to pay the next check in the restaurant, which is not open here either. But so I think in the end, as a musician, in our situation, it's always good to be very humble. And this year and a half, yes, it's not the most exciting year, but it's also I really started, or in the beginning of this pandemic, started thinking about all the people who actually are working for me for the first time. And when I tour, sometimes there's 60, 70 people who work for me who don't actually get to work at all right now. And it's very troubling. And that's why I really hope the sooner people hopefully will get a vaccine and the sooner these people will be able to make a living again and earn a living. It's very tragical, actually, right now.
Very well said. There's a question about repertoire here, and will David,
Yeah.
will you release any
Lovely.
more of your sheet music? What does that mean?
I got inspired a little bit by.
Follow-up question. Somebody else. Do you also intend to compose classical music, such as arias or symphonies and so forth and so on? So tell us about your composing.
I am actually writing a little piano concerto right now.
Love it.
I don't, if I try to use this time to do things. I mean, I write a lot of pop music as well, and R&B, and sometimes even deep house. I like writing with the laptop and with my keyboard, but right now I got a little bit inspired by I like buying old vinyl, and I have this beautiful record player, and there's a store quite near me which I never knew existed, and I started buying all this Rubinstein records because he had this whole collection from this old lady actually who sold it to him. So I bought this whole collection, put it in my place, and started listening to it. And got so inspired. I said, why? Listen, you write so many pieces for the violin, sometimes this, sometimes that. Why not write for different instruments? So I just finished the second movement. I'm halfway through the third. Wow. Of course, I kept the first movement is the biggest challenge, of course. I mean, that's the big baby. So I started with the second, which is finished, halfway through the third, hopefully going to be finished by the end of the month. And then I give it a try at the first movement. So little project.
Elena, maybe this is the last question. And there's so many, hopefully people, if you sent your questions in, David has answered so many of your various aspects of the questions. What is it more like when you compose your own melody song, for example, Serenity? You spend some time every day improvising and then collect most interesting pieces, or you wake up in the morning and this is the already did the piece.
How does a song start, basically? There are two ways. Sometimes you just have a melody in your head. And here's the tricky part. Sometimes you have a great melody in your head, and 2 minutes later you realize that actually is from Beethoven. That's a bad situation. But sometimes you have a great melody and then you try to search, is it somewhere? And it's not. And that's the moment you sit on the piano and harmonize the melody and write it. So, but actually, to be quite honest, listening to so much classical music, it does happen a lot that you think you have something great. 10 minutes into arranging the thing, you're like, that was Brahms. Damn it. Okay, throw this away. It's true.
I've got another question for you. This is a real trivia question. I read this. Like you were the Guinness Book of Records holder for the fastest. I mean, it's the Hummel concerto thing.
No, the side of the bumblebee.
2010. Who dethroned you?
And until now, to be quite honest, nobody, because the person who actually theoretically said he played it faster didn't play it on an acoustic violin. And anybody who knows a little bit about music or about the instrument is when you play an acoustic violin, it's a different kind of bow stroke and a different kind of playing than when you do. And he did actually play it on an electric violin. And that is, I could play it much faster on the electric either, because you don't have to produce the sound.
Right.
So nobody so far. Sorry, I've got to be honest.
Fantastic. Oh my goodness! Look, we're right at 1 hour. We promised to be 1 hour, and we are 1 hour. What a wonderful conversation! Everybody, please go check out this concert, the live from Verona, and wherever else you are, David. It's great to meet you. It's just great to meet you.
Absolutely. I hope at some point when this whole thing is over, we get to meet in person, and we'll be able to shake hands.
If you get a song going that you want to hear somebody sing it so that you can make it violin, let me know.
Absolutely, I will. Thank you so much for your time, and to everybody out there, stay safe, and I hope to see you all very, very soon.